These ancient civilizations quite literally paved the way for us to thrive, but despite their successes, something happened along the way that made them disappear, and their settlements lay in ruins. Join me today as we count down the top 10 mysterious civilizations that vanished overnight. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Olmec Civilization. The Olmec Civilization has often been referred to as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, and from somewhere between 1400 to 400 BC, the civilization rose in the Mexican Gulf Coast. The name Olmec came because they lived in the Olmen, the land of rubber. The Olmec Civilization was thriving and advanced, and they too had their own mysterious stone structures known as the Olmec Colossal Heads. They even were able to successfully build aqueducts, which is an amazing feat for the time period. The civilization, however, started to see its decline around 400 BC. During this time, two of their major cities were just abandoned, which is very mysterious and of course super strange. They left behind everything, their buildings and structures, artifacts and statues. They just seemingly picked up and left. There isn't much left to go on, to be totally honest, but experts believe that some sort of natural disaster might have been a cause for the disappearance. Something like a drought or an eruption could have wreaked havoc on their food supply. There is also the possibility of conflict between them and other civilizations in the area. At the end of the day, exactly what happened here remains quite a mystery, with only the remains of the civilization left to look at for clues. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Ancestral Puebloans. This group, who were a culture of indigenous Americans, built their lives in what is now referred to as the Four Corners region of the United States. This area now consists of southeastern Utah, northeastern Arizona, northwestern New Mexico, and southwestern Colorado. This group was able to create beautiful stone homes into the side of cliffs during the 12th and 13th centuries. When I tell you that the level of skill and work this took was incredible, it really was. Some of these places would have hundreds of rooms, and they were the tallest buildings in the United States until the creation of skyscrapers in the late 1800s. That is absolutely wild. Unfortunately, these works of arts wouldn't be lived in for long, as the civilization met a rapid and violent decline. Many experts will point to religious and political conflict as a contributing factor to the decline of this civilization, but no one is totally clear. What we do know is that there have been discoveries in the area that point to violence, human consumption, water management problems exacerbated by a drought, just a lot of bad stuff that clearly shows the ending was an incredibly tough time for the people going through it. In the end, this all led to many of these people having to abandon their homes and flee south. While this settlement collapsed, it doesn't mean that the culture or the people were entirely gone. Many modern-day descendants of this civilization include the Hopi and the Zuni peoples. In our number 8 spot today, we have Cahokia. This settlement was established somewhere around 1,200 years ago, and it was a river valley community located near what is now St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. This is actually quite an incredible settlement because it was the largest north of Mexico at the time, with a population of around 20,000 people. The city had things like buildings, plazas, and one of the things that they were most known for was these massive mounds. The largest was known as the Monk's Mound, and it was 100 feet tall. The location of this settlement proved to be amazing for a while. Its spot near several rivers made it the perfect trading location. This was all great and ideal until it really wasn't. Experts believe that somewhere around 1200 AD, the population was wiped out by a massive flood that hit the area. Some wondered if the flood only contributed to an already dwindling civilization because they believed that perhaps resources in the area were quickly disappearing, or maybe they had been hit by disease. Others believed that the flood was the first massive event, but that perhaps it was followed by a little ice age that only sealed the fate. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Maya. The Maya are often referred to as one of the most advanced civilizations in our history. They carved huge stone cities in the jungles of South Mexico and Central America, and they weren't just plain and simple places. They were filled with plazas, palaces, pyramids, and temples. They created one of the most famous calendars. They had math and astronomy. This is all to say that this was one of the most thriving civilizations, and they reached their peak around 250 to 900 AD. Here's the thing though, nobody is entirely sure what happened after this. It is believed that it was most likely a combination of famine and drought, as well as the change the environment saw due to the deforestation that happened for farming. This all would have caused there to be a lot more civil unrest, and it's likely that neighboring cities would have turned on each other. We do know, however, that it took around 200 years for the civilization to disappear, so it wasn't just one single event, and it was quite a process, which is such a testament to how strong the Maya people were. While talking about this, it is very important for me to note that I'm talking about the downfall of the Maya civilization, and not the downfall of the Maya as people. There are many people still alive with Maya ancestry who live all over our world. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Indus. The Indus became one of the world's earliest civilizations as they began to build their settlements some 8,000 years ago. They live in what is now India and Pakistan, and they expanded over great distances, 386,000 square miles, which is far more than other, more well-known civilizations of a similar time period. In fact, this group is thriving so much that they accounted for around an estimated 10% of the world's population at the time. The civilization was completely thriving until around 1900 BC, when things took a serious turn for the worst. They began to abandon cities and started to move southeast, and no one is entirely sure why. There was a leading theory that perhaps other groups of people from the north brought about their collapse, but that theory has since been put aside. At this point in time, more recent research is pointing towards a hiatus in the monsoon season that could have played a role in the downfall. When the monsoon season disappeared for essentially 2 centuries, this of course would make it nearly impossible for them to continue farming for food in the way that they had. Experts believe some other factors also played a role, such as natural disasters like earthquakes, or even the outbreak of some diseases like malaria or cholera. In our number 5 spot today, we have Easter Island. Oh Easter Island. Many of us have heard of Easter Island before, whether it's because of the world famous stone statues or because of its incredible remoteness, but whatever the reason, let's take it back to the beginning. Sometime between 300 and 1200 AD, the Rapa Nui people found and settled the island. This is quite the feat already, considering the closest continental point to Easter Island is a point in central Chile that is 3,512 kilometers away. It's so remote, so the fact that they even found it is amazing, and then what they managed to complete is even more fascinating. Without advanced tools or even wheels, they managed to create the most famous moai statues, the largest of which stood 32 feet tall and weighed 82 tons. Of course, this means that these early people on the island were brilliant, hardworking, and super advanced, but something happened, and by the 1800s, the statues had toppled, the population of the island took a drastic downturn, and the leaders of the island were being overthrown. Experts have been able to get a pretty good idea of what happened in this instance though. Firstly, they took a look at charcoal fragments as well as pollen in the sediment, and they were able to determine that those living on the island had cut down almost all of the trees, and the rats on the island were eating the seeds of the trees before they had the ability to regerminate. This led to disaster completely. According to an article on history.com written by Jesse Greenspan, quote, "This ecological catastrophe, which eliminated the ability to make rope or seagoing canoes and reduced the populace to burning grass for fuel, may have then ushered in a period of mass starvation and civil war. The arrival of Europeans only added to the decimation, starting in 1722, when the first Europeans to set foot on Easter immediately shot to death several islanders. By the 1870s, several waves of smallpox, along with a major Peruvian slave raid, had reduced the number of natives to roughly 100. Now, Easter Island is a special territory, and it once again has a thriving population. As of 2017, the Chilean census registered that 7,750 people were living on this island, 45% of which considered themselves Rapa Nui. In our number 4 spot today, we have Gobekli Tepe. This is a pre-pottery Neolithic archaeological site that is located in Turkey. This site has been dated all the way back to somewhere from 9,500 to 8,000 BC, making it the world's oldest known megaliths, which truly is just incredible. This site is comprised of a bunch of large circular circular structures that are being supported by massive stone pillars, many of which are decorated with abstract, anthropomorphic details, and things which have provided very rare and very valuable insight into prehistoric religion and the iconography of the times when it was built. One of the most amazing things about this area is that it was first used at the beginning of the Neolithic period, which marks the oldest human settlements anywhere in the world. It has been called the world's first temple, and it was used by groups of nomadic hunter-gatherers from a wide area. Here's what makes this so remarkably interesting though. Despite what I said earlier, this place is not a settlement and instead was used by many people. The site was essentially built by Stone Age humans who came from about a 200-kilometer radius around the site. It isn't quite clear why they stopped using it, but what is clear is that without a doubt, this was one of the best archaeological finds our modern society has ever had, as it gives us just a glimpse into what life was like in prehistoric times, and it totally changes what we once thought about the timeline of our history. In our number 3 spot today, we have Çatalhöyük. Moving on over from Gobekli Tepe, we have this settlement that sits not too far away at all. Located in what is now Turkey, this settlement was thriving around 8,000 years ago and was known specifically for its engineering and architecture. One really cool thing about how this city was set up was, rather than traditional roads, the people who lived there got around by using the rooftops. I'd feel like I was in Assassin's Creed. That sounds so cool, but I guess for them it was just the most logical setup, especially considering all of the buildings were connected to one another. The people who lived here had a tradition of burying their past loved ones under the floors in their homes, as they did not have any sort of open burial space. In the end, it isn't quite clear exactly what happened to the residents of this ancient city, although there are of course theories. Because of the fact that this city didn't expand as widely as other civilizations seen in the area, many believe that perhaps disease came, spread, and rapidly declined the population. Archaeological work continues on the site, however, even today, to give us every insight possible into the lives of these ancient people. In our number 2 spot today, we have Thonis. I've spoken about Thonis before because this place was super important to legend. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took his first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began, and for years, people thought it was just that. A place in the legends. That was until the early 2000s when it had its modern rediscovery. As it turns out, just over 2,000 years ago, either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two hit the city and submerged it underwater. After 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even just in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the duum palm tree, as well as grape seeds that date back to the early 4th century BC, had been found among the ruins. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Skara Brae. This is an area that is located in Scotland, and it was found in an exceptionally surprising way. In 1850, there was a huge storm that hit Scotland, and it was so bad that around 200 people passed away from it. The next day, however, once the storm had passed, residents of the Orkney Isles began to notice that part of a cliff had dislodged, but it uncovered a sort of hidden settlement. Tests were able to date this site back from 3200 BC to 2200 BC, and it was shown to have been inhabited for about 600 years. There were round stone homes here, and the roofs were made out of whalebone and peat, and the design of this little city suggested that there wasn't a hierarchy, but rather a group of people living peacefully as farmers, herdsmen, and traders. While the site is small, the houses are in quite great shape for the amount of time it's been. This little settlement is Europe's most complete Neolithic village, and while it is older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, it's been called the Scottish Pompeii because of how well preserved it is. No one is exactly sure why the residents of this village abandoned it, but it is likely that a change in climate is somewhat, if not fully, responsible, and a storm might have been the reason those living here had to leave in haste, which is deduced by how all of their belongings were left behind. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!